Flashback 10.1. The Date in Cerberus Café. Sarah walked over to a cafe close to Muon Energy, named Cerberus Café. I am sure Sarah saw the irony in the name. Cerberus was the hound that guarded the gates of hell. Whether some called him Cerberus or Cerberus, it did not matter. It was the dog that was the key to entering hell. And so, Sarah was going to obtain the key to opening the gates of hell from Cerberus. Or specifically, she was going to obtain the key to open the gates of Muon and its hell energy from Mr. Alloy at Cerberus. The idea that Muon hell energy was where celestial flaming dagger of choice and destiny was stored was curious. Just the name of things, somehow that they all connected with each other. I wondered, how were my dagger and Muon energy related? Were they running tests on my dagger? Why did Bracco put my dagger in Muon energy? Was Muon hell energy tied into the tapestry of Baal? And if so, how? I hoped that Sarah might learn more about all this and others from Mr. Alloy. Sarah seated herself in an open seat in the back of Cerberus Café. Mr. Alloy entered the cafe and spotted Sarah in the back. He approached her, smiling widely as he did. Following a generic and uncreative, uninspiring introduction, Mr. Alloy said, "Well, you are quite a pretty thing, aren't you?" Sarah controlled her natural impulse to recoil from his womanizing, objectifying introduction. She thought, I am not a thing, even if I am pretty. But his offensive opening informed her where to focus her demeanor. Mr. Alloy wanted a loose girl, not a proper girl. And so Sarah decided that she would adopt the demeanor of a loose woman to inspire Mr. Alloy's evolving fascination, commitment to her. Sarah replied, I like to look good. I like all the perks that come with looking pretty, for men like you. She leaned in, closing the gap between them and igniting some chemistry in Mr. Alloy. His blood was boiling with lust quickly. He moved his hand onto Sarah's tight, shiny leggings, and he watched her reaction to see if she was receptive to his aggressive advance. Sarah smiled and placed her hand on his invasive hand, and she moved it up to her inner thigh. She could see Mr. Alloy was extremely into her. His body exposed his lust. She muttered, "Much better." Mr. Alloy asked, "Look, seems like we're hitting it off. You being a tourist, you don't have much time in Prague. Let's make the most of it and get a room. We had a lot in common in that dating app. There's a hotel right up the street. What do you say?" He asked like a desperate, in-heat, fantasizing little teenage boy. Sarah put her hand on Mr. Alloy's thigh and with a coy grin said, "Wow, sure, I think that would be fun. Yeah, fun." She added, "Let's not wait. We can explore each other more with more time." Mr. Alloy was hooked and extremely excited to play with Sarah for a tourist fling. Mr. Alloy checked in at the front desk, explaining that Sarah was his fiancée and they wanted a nice room, but not too expensive. He joked they had to save money for the wedding. Sarah saw what Mr. Alloy was doing. He was trying to scam even the hotel for a perk like a free champagne or room service or room upgrade, because they were reputed to allegedly upgrade the recently engaged. The desk clerk said, "Oh, congratulations. You are such a fine-looking couple. I'll send up a bottle of champagne for you to celebrate." Mr. Alloy was not fine-looking. He was actually worse than his online photo. He was rotund, fat-handed, He wore slightly old, dirty suits and worn slip-on shoes. Mr. Alloy was not an attractive man. Sarah smiled, but thought to herself, "This man continues to prove he deserves no quarter or compassion, and he deserves what's coming to him. He's a womanizing, deceitful, manipulative, lustful scumbag." Sarah no longer fretted about whether she should be forceful or not with her Mark. Indeed, Mr. Alloy's actions proved his ignoble character to Sarah, and thus she felt he deserved his forthcoming fate at her hands. They entered the hotel suite, which had a living room with TV with an adjoined separate bathroom and a bedroom with a king-size bed. Sarah suggested that Mr. Alloy prepare for hotel fun in the bedroom. She would use the bathroom to pretty herself up. Sarah came out of the bathroom to find Mr. Alloy naked in the bed. He likely knew that he was not an attractive man, and so hid himself under the sheets, hoping that Sarah would continue their dalliance. Sarah sauntered over to bed and leaned down to Mr. Alloy. She kissed him on his forehead gently and climbed up on top of him, still wearing her blouse and her leggings. That's right. Mr. Alloy was naked in bed beneath the sheets, and Sarah was on top of Mr. Alloy, on top of the sheets, fully clothed. Mr. Alloy reached out to grab Sarah to pull her down to him, but Sarah pulled a tiny 2-inch stiletto knife from inside the backside of her leggings. Apparently, she had a secret hidden sheath built into the stitching, able to store a tiny stiletto knife. Sarah placed the blade at Mr. Alloy's Adam's apple, and she said, "I am sorry, Mr. Alloy." She enumerated, "Do not interrupt. Listen to me. I do not want to hurt you, but you have something I need. I must have your company badge. I will kill you to secure it if necessary. I need your fingerprints, or I will cut your hands off and take your fingers." Sarah looked intensely into Mr. Alloy's tearing eyes. "I am sorry. I really am. Please nod, indicating that you understand what I said, and that you are going to cooperate with me." "I do not want to cut your hands off, or hurt you, or kill you," Sarah said, almost matter-of-factly. Sarah had quite the influence on Mr. Alloy with her stiletto threat at his throat. Mr. Alloy nodded in agreement to anything Sarah wanted. He did not want to die. His sexual desire turned into a turtle desire. He wanted to retreat into his shell and escape the horror that he was facing, that he had put himself into out of his lust, that he was now going to pay for. Indeed, Mr. Alloy could only wonder. He paid for all of this. He paid for food. He paid for the hotel. Now, would he pay for it all with his life as well? Sarah said, "Thank you, Mr. Alloy. I appreciate your help." She unfurled a zip tie from behind her belt. Yeah, she had a row of zip ties on the backside of her belt. Sarah, like Deputy Taylor, had gadgets and was a hardcore warrior, it seemed. I don't think any of our original team would have believed that front desk admin at the law firm of Midnight and Associates was actually a badass from the Knights Templar. There were always surprises, it seemed, no matter where or what we did. Sarah rolled Mr. Alloy over on his side, under the sheets, then onto his stomach. She pulled his hands behind his back and zip-tied them together. She pulled another zip tie out and bound his feet at his ankles. She cautioned Mr. Alloy, "Do not say a word. I will be right back. If you say something or move, I will kill you. There is no hurt. There will just be death. Understand? Nod if you do. Mr. Alloy was terrified. Urine flowed from his bound body. He nodded, eyes wider than he likely had ever had opened them before. It was all that he could do to not scream. Sarah exited the bedroom just for a minute, at most, and she returned with a gag. She placed it on Mr. Alloy, so he was muzzled. He could not scream, talk, or bite. He was muzzled like a dog. Finally, Sarah retrieved Mr. Alloy's belt and tied his leg bindings to the headboard. There it was. Mr. Alloy was totally bound, silenced, and helpless, partially covered in sheets, and Sarah never even hit or hurt him. In fact, she kissed him on the forehead and gave him hours of fantasies. Sarah took only Mr. Alloy's company badge and used a specialized tape strip to obtain fingerprints from him afterwards. She said to Mr. Alloy, "Thank you again for your help. I do appreciate it. If maid service does not come and find you soon, rest assured, I will call the hotel and make sure that they find and rescue you. But it will be many hours. I suggest you try and sleep. Would you like the TV on? Not if you would like it on." Mr. Alloy nodded, and Sarah turned on the TV for him. She changed channels until he nodded for his choice. It all seemed silly and outlandish. Sarah was so very polite and considerate, while threatening Mr. Alloy's life and taking his badge and fingerprints. Polite Sarah seemed a contradiction to life-threatening Knights Templar Sarah. It seemed to me, as Deputy Taylor was to Soldier Taylor, so was polite Sarah to Knights Templar Sarah. Both were living dichotomies of gentle kindness, civility, and violent, dominant soldier apathy.